Welcome to the complete animation of Pam from Illumination's Migration. Illumination is the studio known for one thing and one thing only. And you better believe that they plastered this movie with as many minions as they could possibly cram into it, but only for the promotional materials and the opening credits and the short that played before the movie in theaters. But thank all that is good and holy, there was not a single minion inside the actual movie itself. Instead, what you get is an absolutely heartwarming tale of a family that goes on a journey together. It's like, when I saw this movie for the first time, all I could think is, there's like a whole lot of like The Croods and a Goofy movie in this movie. You know, it's about a family on a trip. Especially the very opening scene. The very opening scene where Mac, Pam's husband, is telling a bedtime story to his kids, which is basically just thinly veiled warnings about how he wants the kids to just stay safe. It's like, that was really similar to how the dad voiced by Nicolas Cage in The Croods started the movie. Like, he would constantly tell stories and be like, really thinly veiled allegories trying to keep his family in line. And I think that Migration kind of it went past that. The comparison to The Croods kind of isn't, like, it started out that way, but later on it turned more into being more like a Goofy movie. And if you know how much I like a Goofy movie, that is high praise. I really think that animated features about families going on a trip and, you know, getting stronger because of it, I think that there's room in this world for more than just a Goofy movie. Although, to be fair, The Croods also basically did that. Although, The Croods, their journey was, you know, a cataclysmic world-ending event. You know, the kind of earthquake and stuff that made things go south in the Land Before Time. The Croods actually delivered on that. It's like, it wasn't just like happening in 2 minutes and then it was over and then they have to survive the aftermath. It's like, in The Croods, the disaster is constantly coming for them. But Migration, it doesn't have a disaster. What it is it is going on a trip because that's what you need to do as a duck. You gotta migrate. Sure, they could choose to not, but think about how much they wouldn't have been able to experience together if they hadn't. So, when I first saw this movie in theaters, I felt like the opening, it didn't really do it. The very opening bit where where Mac was telling a story. But I think it really started to pick up the pace. And once it hit its stride, it really started to resonate with me. And even the parts that didn't resonate with me that much the first time, as I've been, you know, editing this video, like, the entire movie resonates with me. Like, later on, about halfway through the movie, the villain is encountered. And the villain is a chef who runs a restaurant, and one of the specialties is duck à l'orange, which is a dish that I would actually like to try one day. Which does bring up an interesting point. With animated movies, with, talking animals, you can really make any animal the victim. It's like, you watch Migration, and there's no talking bugs, there's no talking fish, and so, if an animal eats a bug or, a fish, you're like, okay, that's just fine. But you look at A Bug's Life or ants, and it's like, oh yeah, the bugs are totally the victims here. Or if you look at Finding Nemo, it's like, yeah, the fish are totally the victims here. But then you go to How to Train Your Dragon, and, everybody eats fish. The Vikings eat the fish, the dragons love to eat the fish. And so it's just interesting that depending on what class of animal you turn into, the sentient, walking, talking, more anthropomorphic, if you will, characters, you can make anybody the victim. And so in Migration, the birds are the victims, especially the ducks. And a bunch of people, when they talk about Migration, they immediately jump to the other big animated feature film and its sequel that deal with, fairly realistic but still cartoon birds. And I, of course, am talking about Blue Sky's Rio. Now, Rio and Migration, in terms of story and themes and stuff, I don't think that they could be any, further apart. Rio is, about fish out of water and, childhood trauma getting resolved as an adult and, a romance. Whereas Migration, it does have romance, but it's the kind of romance that I like to see a lot more. It's like seeing two characters fall in love over the course of one movie often doesn't feel quite right. It's like relationships take time. And, there are, people who fall in love and get married in a really short amount of time, like 4 or 5 months. But, I think that for most people, it usually takes a bit longer than that. And so when, movies like Rio, where it's like the entire movie takes place over, less than 2 weeks, and, at the end, Blue gets the girl, it's like, is that really the way things happen? But here in Migration, Pam and Mac, they're already married. They're married with kids. The fact that they're in a relationship isn't the issue. But what this movie does do is it shows that they can grow that relationship. Even a couple who have been together for years, there's still room to grow. Find more about each other. Find more about yourself. There's just more. And this sequence right here, it's like, one of the things about Migration is it sort of feels like kind of episodic, where each part of the movie is like its own act, its own scene, and they just sort of, they go after one after another. And it works, but this scene here with the herons, just this old lady heron and her old man husband who is basically just stuck in a chair the whole time, is so good. Because it's my favorite kind of horror. It's like, I don't watch horror movies. I don't, go watch movies like The Quiet Place or The Sixth Sense or Saw or Paranormal Activity. Yeah, all those things. I just know them by reputation. I've never seen them. I have no desire to see them. Like, they have zero appeal to me. And so when a movie like this, that is not a horror movie, but has a really good horror sequence that is all tension and no like actual danger, like I just love it, because it, like, this scene, it's all about just sort of making it seem like, the herons might be out to get them, but in the end they're not. But while you're watching, it's like, of course that's what they're doing, but the execution is so good, it's just enjoyable. And I think a big part of it is just how well done the acting is. So in animation, there are two kinds of acting. There's the voice acting, which in properly done animation happens before a single frame of animation is completed, where the voice actors go in the booth, they read their lines, and they basically bring the storyboard that happens before even that, they bring that to life through just sheer voice. And there is some incredible voice acting talent in Migration. Just absolutely incredible. And then the other kind of acting is the animation. Animators often say that they feel like they are actors, and the characters that you see on screen are like how they act. In fact, a bunch of animators, they'll have the reference footage, because it's like when voice actors are in the sound booth and they're recording their lines, they'll often have a camera pointed at them. And so as they're, acting out with their hands and their facial expressions and stuff, as they're reading their lines and stuff, the animators will be able to look at that reference footage and get an idea of what the voice actor was doing. But animators will also have things like a mirror at their desk, so that they can just make faces at the mirror, so they can make the face that they think they want to make, get a good look at it, and then transfer that to what they're either drawing or what they're animating with their rigged model. And then some animators will go even a further distance, and they will actually get them and themselves just doing other stuff in front of another camera to get even more reference footage. And that works a lot in animated movies that have a lot of human characters. I don't know what the animators do for reference footage in a movie like Migration, because they're birds. The way that the birds fly in Migration is absolutely incredible. They must have had a lot of reference footage of just regular birds flying, so that they could really understand how they move their bodies around when things happen. Because the way that the birds move in Migration is just so good. It's like, ducks have very strange bodies. It's like they can walk around on the ground and they're all right with it, but they have these flat webbed feet, and so they've got a waddle. But they can also swim, and when they swim, it's like they're just floating on top of the water, but their feet are under the water. And in Migration, they do such a good job of showing that if you look close beneath the water caustics, their feet are actually moving. It's like they're not just motoring around for no reason. They are actually paddling around with their webbed feet. And then when ducks fly, they're not like eagles or, those birds that do like really big wingspans and just glide around all day. And they're also not like itsy bitsy birds like robins or hummingbirds. Like, ducks are very unique animals, and it leads to like really interesting movement opportunities. And I think that that is one of the great triumphs of Migration. Migration leaned into the fact that its main characters are ducks and made them move like ducks. But they also made them very humanoid, like, especially in the faces. The faces of the characters in Migration are broad and cartoony with big expressive eyes, and it just works. But at the same time, they also stick really close to being ducks, but not like super duper cartoony ducks, you know, like DuckTales or Donald Duck or Daffy Duck. And I do think that there's a good place in the world for super cartoony ducks like that, but in Migration, they are just a really good compromise between naturalistic animal and anthropomorphizing it enough so that you can get some really good expressive faces. Like, Pam in Migration has the entire range of emotions. One of the big things that I think of when I think that an animated movie is complete is there anything that I would like to see these characters do that they didn't? Like, is there any, you know, situation that would lead to more interesting movements of their body? Or was there an emotion that they could have felt that wasn't shown on screen? And I think Migration, it does the whole thing. Migration has emotions going from, you know, parents loving their children all the way to a couple reigniting the love they have for each other, all the way to just sheer rage at another character, to complete terror, to fear, to tears of joy, tears of sadness. Migration covers the entire gamut of emotions. And like, I honestly don't think that there is a single facial expression that I would like to see that wasn't represented in Migration. Like, especially the ending. The very ending, where it's just a constant roller coaster of emotions where, you know, first they're safe, then they're captured, then they're escaping, then they're captured again, then they're falling to their death, then they're rescued. Like, all of that, the facial expressions during the entire climax just really works. So the villain in this story is the chef, and he is really interesting because in this movie, there are no human characters that talk. There's one dance scene, and there's a singer, and so that's the only human character that actually, like, says words. And it's all in singing, you know, kind of like Lyle Lyle Crocodile, but in reverse. And what that means is that the villain, who is a chef, all he does is he has grunts and he has a really expressive face. And to be honest, when I first saw Migration in theaters, I didn't really like the chef that much. But as I've been scrubbing through the footage of this movie, and there's a lot of footage of this movie, and this character Pam has a lot of screen time. She has so much screen time. This is one of the longest videos I've ever made. I am honestly impressed that I've been able to talk for this commentary as well as I have. But as I've been going back through the footage, I've come to appreciate the chef villain more. I think that he's better than I first thought. And one of the things that this movie does really well is it has back and forth. It has scenes where the characters are succeeding for a part of it, but then the tables turn and then they aren't doing so hot, but then the tables turn again. It's like the constant back and forth of how well the characters are doing is good, because it keeps the tension high. And it's like, with movies like this, you know it's going to have a happy ending. It's a given. You know it will. But they still manage to tell the story in such a way that it's still interesting to watch how they manage to have a happy ending. And I think that one of the awesome things that this movie does is the characters that they meet along the way. Like the tropical bird from Jamaica who ends up leading them there. Getting him out, and it's like, who would have thought that when they first started out this journey, living in, some beautiful autumn mountains, that they would find a colorful, charismatic bird from a tropical island who would end up basically being an integral part of the group. Who would have thought that at the beginning? I didn't. That's one of the things that I did. I was on media blackout for Migration, because I instantly knew just by looking. I think I scrubbed through like maybe 30 seconds of footage from the initial reveal trailer, and I was immediately hooked. I was like, okay, I am going to watch this movie. I'm going to watch this movie opening night. And then after that, I was media blackout. Like, obviously I saw like thumbnails here and there, but I never went and watched an entire trailer for this movie. And I'm so glad I did, because I just think that I really like being surprised as much as I can when movies come out. And I think that if I watched all of the footage that this movie had, it would have spoiled a lot. Like the bird from Jamaica, or the fact that Aquafina is in this movie and she plays, some ratty little pigeon. And I liked how this movie handled pigeons. It's like, yeah, we know we're disgusting, flying rat birds, but hey, we're still characters ourselves. And I think that Aquafina coming in and out is... She was in here for a good amount of time. There are some people who absolutely despise Aquafina's voice. She has this sort of raspy and high-pitched, sort of nasally-ish, I don't even really know how to explain it, voice. And a bunch of people really don't like it. And I think it's fine. It's fine. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the upcoming Kung Fu Panda 4 when she plays a character that looks like she'll be a pretty major character. Maybe even more major than her character Sisu in Raya and the Last Dragon. Certainly more major than Miss Tarantula in The Bad Guys. That character barely felt included in that movie. But... So speaking of The Bad Guys, recently we've seen animated movies start coming out that are having more interesting art styles. Because, it's been said before, I've talked about it before, the animation industry has sort of plateaued in terms of the visuals for 3D animated movies. It's like the plateau really started to hit around 2016. You look at the movies that came out that year, Sing, Zootopia. You look at them now, it's like they still look really good. The visuals haven't improved that much. And so what Migration is doing is it is not as drastically, but still it is going into a more stylized way of doing things. The characters are a little more cartoony than they might have been otherwise. The And then the way that just the visuals are done is a little more stylized. Like, the way that their feathers are done, they're a little bit less, like, absolutely realistic, but they still look that way. I don't even really know how to explain it, but I love the colors in Migration. Migration has such a warm, saturated color palette. If you were alive and cognizant of media around 2008, 2009, the absolute worst visual trend ever happened, especially in video games, where they would have this absolutely ugly color palette. Like Call of Duty Modern Warfare, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, and Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas. Those games, they're just like, let's have no color. Let's have this, color filter that smears everything green or gray or brown. Like, oh. And a bunch of movies did it too. And it's like, for movies, it works a bit. But with games, ugh. And I am so glad that we are over that. And Migration especially. Migration is bright. It is colorful. It does have darkness, but even the darkness is colorful. If I had to choose between dark and dreary and brown and gray, or oversaturated, overly colorful, I would take the oversaturated and overly colorful every day of the week. But Migration isn't oversaturated or over colorful. It is just colorful and fairly saturated. It's not over anything. So one of the interesting things about this video is the first part of the video, I started with a 1080p video source, but later I was able to get a decent 4K video source. It's not the perfect one because it's ripped from the web version. The 4K Blu-ray isn't out yet, and so the absolute highest quality version of this movie isn't available for me to work with. So I would be interested to see if anybody was able to catch where the transition is. I'll give you a hint. It's before this scene. Like, this scene right here is now using the 4K footage. But I try not to watch movies using the ripped version online if there is going to be a physical version available sometime, because I really like making sure that I have the best visual quality. Like, when I'm editing videos like this, obviously I try to take advantage of getting it out as soon as possible at the highest available quality to me. But, at the time of this video right here, the physical version of the movie isn't out yet. So I do what I have to do. But, I buy every movie. In fact, Elemental, Pixar's movie from 2023, they had this really dumb thing where the 4K version was exclusive. There was a steelbook from Best Buy, and then just a regular 4K that was only sold at Walmart. And I didn't appreciate that fact, and so in order for me to keep my collection going of having the highest available resolution of every animated movie possible, I had to buy basically scalper prices to get Elemental. And I think the movie is pretty much worth it. I liked Elemental, but physical media is dying. Best Buy has stopped carrying physical media in stores. You cannot go into a Best Buy right now and buy a DVD or a Blu-ray or a 4K disc, because they just don't do that anymore. And the writing is on the wall. It's going to happen. So what I am doing is I am trying to collect legitimate copies of every animated feature film I can, and anything that I can't purchase, well, I still want it in my collection, so I get it the way that I can. And I really enjoyed working with the footage for Migration here, but once I get my copy of the 4K Blu-ray, I am so going to watch it again, because this movie is just that good. It's worth rewatching. So this bit right here at the end, this movie reminds me a lot of a Goofy movie. And in a Goofy movie, it had the scene where the child saves the parent. And in this time, it's 2 children and 2 parents, because I think that's one of the things that's really underappreciated about a Goofy movie. It's the fact that Goofy is a single dad who honestly really just wants the best for his child. And it's hard for him. He has to keep a job. My headcanon is that Goofy is a widower. His wife died when Max was really young, and he's just raised his son on his own and never remarried. Kind of sad, but that's one of the things that I absolutely love about Migration. It is just a real, solid, traditional family, and they stay together the entire time. And it's kind of weird when you think about all the animated movies out there. It's not that common for parents to stay alive. It's like, it's almost a default that if there is a parent, their counterpart is gone. You know, their spouse is not there. Whether it's The Lion King, Mufasa died. Whether it's The Rescuers, Penny is an orphan. Or The Secret of Nim, Jonathan Brisby died before the events of the movie. Like, it's not that common. And so when you get movies like Migration or 101 Dalmatians, where the parents are alive and together the entire time, it just feels nice. Especially 101 Dalmatians. I really like Pongo and Perdita's relationship in there. It's like, yes, Migration, you know, it shows that, yes, Pam and Mac, they love each other, but they're able to grow that relationship. I liked how in 101 Dalmatians, Pongo and Perdita, like, they are just the dream team, like, basically since they become a couple. You know, it was a little rocky at the beginning. You know, I think 101 Dalmatians did a good job of showing what I like to think of as a more realistic relationship, because of the time skip. That's the thing. It's like movies like Rio, they're all about having, you know, they show the relationship in real time, but real time is really fast. But in 101 Dalmatians, it's like it shows how they met and then time skip. Who knows what happened in between there? But the relationship that they have at the end, it works. And this scene right here, where Pam and Mac basically just consign themselves to their fate because they really don't see any way out of this one, and then they just embrace each other. It's so good. But then when they see Hope with their 2 kids coming to save them, and then they do it, it is a family effort. They're trying as hard as they can inside the cage. Gwen and Dax are trying as hard as they can outside. And then this bit right here where they're just sort of doing a little bit of free falling, embracing each other. I love this movie. I liked this movie when I first saw it in theaters, but now I love this movie. It's like, I don't think many people who watch these videos really appreciate the sheer amount of effort that goes into making it. It's like, obviously it's nothing like actually animating, but like cutting out all the footage that doesn't have a character, a specific character in it, and then cropping in that footage to try to include, as little as possible but that one character. It is not an insignificant amount of work. I think that I have spent probably 7 or 8 hours editing this movie over the last week. And the only reason I do it is because I enjoy it. I absolutely adore scrubbing through the footage of a movie I like and then just really getting to appreciate the visuals on display. It's like, there are some scenes where I'm literally going frame by frame to get stuff done, and you really learn to appreciate things. And, that's one of the reasons why I like to think that I have a fairly valid opinion about animation. I have been doing this for upwards of 5 years. And, like, I just think that I appreciate an animation. And if I don't like a movie, there's no way I would be able to stand scrubbing through all of the footage to do a main character like this. Like, if somebody wanted me to do the main character of the Emoji Movie, I think he was like the defective smiley emoji. No, I don't remember what. It's like, there are a lot of movies that get a bad rap as being like not a good movie. And I think most of the people who dismiss movies like that are overly critical and harsh. The Emoji Movie actually deserves its reputation. So, you would have to pay me a lot for me to do this with the main character of the Emoji Movie. But this movie, I just really like this movie. And this character, Pam, she I think is a really well done character. She is a loving wife, a loving mother. But she isn't defined by being a mother. That's just part of her. She also wants to meet people. She wants to experience the world. She wants to, she didn't even know that dancing was a thing. But when her and her husband discovered it, all of a sudden they love it. And now they're dancing. I just really like this movie. And I really like Pam and Mac and Dax and Gwen. The whole family. In fact, I think that that's one of the things that really stuck out to me working on this complete animation is I gained a better appreciation for Gwen, their daughter. When I first saw the movie, I didn't really appreciate her character that much, but I think that I like her a lot more now. She's just cute. She's just a cute little kid. And one of the things I really like about Migration is it just sort of just these are ducks, and the interesting things that they have about them, they lean into them. They're mallards. The males have these distinctive green heads, but I really like how they showed that the females, they have blue feathers on their wings. It's just a little spot of color on an otherwise pretty brown plumage. I just really like it. I am genuinely impressed that I've been able to talk this much. There's some shorter complete animation videos that I struggled to find interesting things to say in order to get the commentary out. But not Migration. Migration is special. It's just too bad it didn't run away at the box office. Please don't make more Minions, Illumination. Thanks for watching.